I think it's okay to fanboy out despite the Penguins' 3-2 loss to the Philadelphia Flyers on Saturday at Wells Fargo Center. I am Dan Kingerski on the Pittsburgh Hockey Now YouTube platform. There's so much to like, and yet the result was so frustrating, if not a little depressing. So how to balance all of that? If you're not alone in like, oh, I liked it, but I hated it. So did the locker room. So did Mike Sullivan. They all sort of towed that line after the game of being encouraged by dominating the Philadelphia Flyers. The Penguins without Evgeny Malkin, who is week to week. Now without Sidney Crosby, upper body injury. Felt a lot better Saturday, according to Sullivan. He skated in the morning, felt better, still wasn't well enough to play. And then the hockey gods, just to spice up that degree of difficulty, said, you know what, Brian Rust is hurt too. And the Penguins had to put Rust on IR, which really was just kind of a paper sort of thing, so that they could call up Vasily Ponomarev from the Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins to have 12 healthy forwards. Now, Rust won't miss any time after the Four Nations because there isn't a roster freeze, so his IR clock is running through a couple of weeks when there's no hockey. Actually, pretty smart thinking by the Penguins. So they call up Ponomarev to plug into the lineup. The Penguins' third line Saturday was Emil Bemstrom, Ponomarev, and Philip Tomasino. We'll get into that. Let's first talk about the game itself. The Penguins dominated the Flyers. 30 minutes into the game, they're out shooting them 16-3. And yet, they're tied 1-1 and then down 2-1. The Flyers scored 2 goals on their first 5 shots. It was just probably maddening for the Penguins to so thoroughly be putting their boot on the Flyers' neck and mistakes, just a couple of mistakes. Mike Sullivan, I thought, had a pretty good explanation for those pretty egregious mistakes. Is when things are going so well offensively. What was the term he used? When the getting is good, or the getting is too good, you lose your defensive conscience. And essentially, what he was saying was, it was just all hands on deck going forward because there was no resistance. The Penguins were going for that goal, and because all the momentum is going that way, you forget some of your core responsibilities. He didn't seem overly upset about it. Vinny Desharnais, bad pinch. Flyers score a goal 44 seconds into the game. In the middle of the second period, kind of a weird bounce on P.O. Joseph. His pass across the blue line hits the wall in the offensive zone and goes 45 degrees backward towards the Penguin zone. Poor Blomqvist. He hasn't started a game since Seattle a couple of weeks ago. He's got a decision to make. There's a puck rolling into the Penguin zone. Garnet Hathaway is going to win the race. Chris Letang is kind of on Hathaway. What does Blomqvist do? He hesitated. He stopped. And he went for it. The couple hesitations allowed Hathaway to close in on the puck. Blomqvist tries to clear it right off Hathaway, right behind him, into the net. Just bad luck. Well, not really bad luck. Kind of a bad decision by Blomqvist. I think as he gets older, he'll recognize that's a fourth line plug. If he gets a breakaway, I'll be okay. Regardless, those were the little things that sort of submarined the Penguins. Otherwise, they were all over the Flyers. They outchanced Philadelphia 40-21. High danger chances, 16-7, according to Natural Stat Trick. The Penguins really they had their way with the Flyers. They couldn't get that goal. Talking with Anthony Beauvillier after the game. And let me set the stage for talking with Beauvillier. Because, this is part of my job, right? We go in the locker room. By the way, there were only 2 reporters in the locker room. the Penguins TV and the Penguins team reporter, Dan and Michelle, are there. But there were only two other reporters, me and some other guy with, the same DK initials. And we had sort of a little, a truce, a mutual understanding. You go your way, I'll go my way. I'll leave you alone to have your conversations. I'm not going to jump in and you're not going to jump in on mine. So I went for Beauvillier, and Anthony is staring at the floor. I mean, his legs extended, the tape still around his hockey socks, his skates kind of still on. This is a good 5 minutes after the game, and he is burning a hole through his skates and the floor. I'm standing there, and he has no idea. Absolutely no clue that I'm 2 feet away. Until a couple seconds later, I said, Anthony, can I steal you for a second? Which is kind of my go-to line in the locker room. Gracious guy. Talked, was honest, and was like, some of the chances, you go back home and you wonder, what if that one? And you wonder how the hell they didn't go in. I thought that summed it up pretty well. He had a whale of a game on Saturday. I mean, maybe his very best. 8 shots on goal, 5 more attempted. Think about that. 13 shot attempts for Anthony Beauvillier, 8 goes on goal. But with 4.5 minutes to go, the Penguins trailing by 1, getting a power play. Beauvillier spins off the defenders. He's now clean. He's got a look at Urson, uncontested. Doesn't know how it didn't go in. Shoulder, post, ticketed for the far top corner, and just couldn't get it. And that one really frustrated him because he of all the players, I thought he deserved better. Another player that deserved better, I didn't get a chance to talk to him after the game, was Danton Heinen. Heinen didn't try to do too much. He instead did everything. Heinen was carrying the team to the best of his ability. He didn't have Beauvillier's stats, but he had the scoring chances. He was killing penalties. He gets the breakaway with 5 minutes to go. When Jamie Drysdale's stick blows up at the blue line, Heinen gets the breakaway. Drysdale actually had to tackle him from behind. Why that wasn't a penalty shot, I don't know. The referees had a little bit of a tough night. The calls were fine for the most part. They were game management calls. You live with it either way. But that overturned goal, or the waved off goal that they overturned to award to the Penguins, was quite the story, because there was no announcement in the arena. And let me give you another quick aside story here before we get back to the game. The referees were just like, there was no goal. No explanation. Was it a whistle? They go over to Sullivan, and Sullivan is just full-throated, letting them have it. I mean, he's not back on top of the bench. He's down at ice level, and he is just, his big voice was being used. So the referees huddle up, and they kind of work backwards to unstick themselves. The referees decided that the referees ruled there was goalie interference, and that's why they waved it off. Sure, whatever. So now, because they ruled goalie interference, they've opened the door for Sullivan to challenge. Sullivan, of course, does, because there was zero goalie interference. What you saw was Samuel Urson go prostrate, face forward, his legs in a V behind him. Well, the puck is right in the middle of the V. I could see it from the press box. There was no way that the referee couldn't see the puck. Hayes, just kind of pickle stabber, knocks it into the net, surgically. And it's 3-2. They wave it off, so they review what they already knew, right? And they clearly took a little longer on the review just to make it look like they were really, checking things out. And then they're like, oh yeah, there was no goalie interference. We don't know what we saw. Good goal. Except they don't actually, in the arena, say there was no goalie interference. They just say, after review, good goal. So we're all like, what the hell happened? Fortunately, I was able to grab Mike Sullivan after his media scrum and, kind of get him to tell us the story, which, he graciously obliged. He was in a good mood. If he were in a bad mood, I don't think I would have asked him to, elaborate on all of that. So we've talked about Anthony Beauvillier. We've talked about Danton Heinen. Let's give another mention to Kevin Hayes, who spent a month in the press box this season before getting back in the lineup. He was fantastic on Saturday. Another player who was really good for a second straight night was P.O. Joseph. I think Joseph is elevating his game back to the very top where he can be, playing with Chris Letang, but also this situation. He's jumping into the play with a little more assertiveness. He's going for it. His speed is clearly evident. I really like how he is playing. He kind of gave me the quote of the night, which is the headline of the Pittsburgh Hockey Now report card. We worked our asses off. That's what P.O. said. All right, so we have talked about the low to high game being a little bit stilted. I think I did. You wanted to see Chris Letang and Erik Karlsson jump into the play more often rather than that low to high game and blast away going to the net. I thought that was a shortcoming of the Penguins, that they could have been more dynamic, add that fourth stick into the play, especially Karlsson, leading the rush and doing the things that Erik Karlsson can do. They instead sort of played in that small box. Ryan Graves and Vincent Desharnais, those bad pinches in the first period, kind of put the Penguins, it dulled the Penguins' domination just enough, obviously giving Philadelphia a goal, but also Philadelphia some life. Otherwise, the Penguins had essentially squashed Philly. And another player I'm going to circle that you're going to get mad at, but when have I ever let you getting mad stop me from telling you the truth? Vasily Ponomarev had a terrible game. Straight up. He gets the call to come up from Wilkes-Barre and did nothing with the opportunity on Saturday. In fact, he probably hurt himself or hurt his perception because he was making minor league plays, minor league passes that fueled Philadelphia's counterattack and transition, turnovers. They had one shot attempt. Friday night with Kevin Hayes in the middle of Emil Bemstrom, who also got the late call up and attacked the Rangers. Bemstrom was great Friday with Hayes and Tomasino. That line was fantastic. Take out Kevin Hayes, put in Ponomarev, and there was no snap. There was no dynamic. There was no energy. And that line should have energy. So as a result, Bemstrom and Tomasino, who were so good 24 hours earlier, were completely irrelevant as the center was just not in the game. When you get your shot, you can't miss it like that. You can't make blind passes at the blue line to nobody. You can't make the backhand pass at center ice to the wrong team. You can't do those sorts of things. And unfortunately, Ponomarev did all of those things, multiple times. So he is looking more and more like a 4A player. I'm not going to cast final verdict. I'm saying when you get your opportunity, you've got to make it count. And he did the exact opposite on Saturday. So that's not good for his future. Joel Blomqvist needs to play a little more, but also the Penguins are in a playoff race. So they've got years with Blomqvist. He clearly was a bit rusty, but he fought through it. That I thought was that bodes well for Joel Blomqvist's future when you don't have your A game. And he admitted, he got better as the game went on. By the third period, he was settled in and locked in, and I would agree. He was clearly shaky, or unsteady, what maybe is a better term, in the first period plus. When you don't have your best and you fight through it to put forth a pretty good performance, which Blomqvist did. He stopped, several breakaways and, a couple of odd man rushes. So that's a pretty good thing. So that's 15 minutes on a 5-minute Penguins postgame. From the lovely club quarters here in Philadelphia. I've done the math. The last 30 days, I've spent more than 20 days in a hotel. And actually, I've rather enjoyed this week in Philadelphia and New York. Mostly New York. Philadelphia, this city, I used to love this place. And we're going to leave it at that. All right, so from Philadelphia, I will be back home Sunday, good Lord willing. We'll be live on WPXI, final word after the Super Bowl or after the big game, whatever you want to call it. I think I can say Super Bowl because it's on NBC. And I'll be on NBC, WNBC. Okay, from Philadelphia, I'm Dan Kingerski on the Pittsburgh Hockey Now YouTube channel. Like, subscribe, and share it. Have fun.